My son stopped me at the hospital door after I'd driven 15 hours straight and said the words that would cost them everything. "Mom, what are you doing here? My wife said she doesn't want you around." 4 days later, when the hospital called asking how I'd like to pay the $2,300 delivery bill, I smiled for the first time since my grandson was born. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me back up and explain how we got to this delicious moment of karma. 3 weeks earlier, my daughter-in-law Amanda had called me practically glowing through the phone. "Mom, Rebecca, the baby's due any day now, and we'd love for you to be here when he arrives. You're going to be such an amazing grandmother." I should have known something was off when she started calling me Mom Rebecca instead of just Rebecca. After 5 years of marriage to my son, Michael, she'd never been that warm. But the excitement of becoming a grandmother for the first time clouded my judgment. At 65, I'd been dreaming of this moment since Michael announced the pregnancy 8 months ago. I live in Phoenix. They live in Denver. 15 hours of desert highways and mountain passes. I packed my best outfits, bought gifts for the baby, and even splurged on a week at a nice hotel near the hospital. This was going to be the most important week of my life. The drive itself was brutal. My back ached from sitting so long, but every mile brought me closer to meeting my grandson. I'd stopped only for gas and coffee, calling Michael twice to check if there was any news. Both times, Amanda answered his phone, sweet as pie, telling me to drive safely and that they couldn't wait to see me. When I finally pulled into the hospital parking garage at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning, exhausted but exhilarated, I felt like I'd conquered the world. The maternity ward receptionist told me Amanda was in labor, room 314. I practically floated down the hallway, my heart pounding with anticipation. That's when I found Michael pacing outside the delivery room, looking more stressed than excited. The moment he saw me, his face changed. Not relief, not joy, something closer to panic. "Mom, what are you doing here?" The question hit me like a slap. "What do you mean? Amanda invited me. She called and said you wanted me here for the birth." Michael's eyes darted toward the delivery room door, then back to me. He looked like a man caught between two impossible choices. She changed her mind about having family here. She wants it to be just us." "But I drove 15 hours, Michael. I'm here now."
"I'm not asking to be in the delivery room, just to be nearby when my grandson arrives." "I know, Mom, but Amanda's really adamant about this. You know how emotional she gets. And the doctor said stress could complicate the delivery." Something in his voice told me this wasn't Amanda's sudden change of heart. This felt planned, orchestrated. But I was too tired and too shocked to fight in a hospital corridor. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll go to my hotel and wait for your call." Michael looked relieved, which only confirmed my suspicion that I was being deliberately pushed out. "Thanks, Mom. I'll call you as soon as the baby's born." Okay. I spent the next 8 hours in my hotel room checking my phone every 10 minutes. When Michael finally called at 10 a.m. Wednesday morning, his voice was exhausted but happy. "Mom, he's here! Ethan Michael Rodriguez, 7 pounds 2 ounces. He's perfect." "Congratulations, honey! When can I meet him?" Another pause. "Amanda's really tired, Mom. The delivery was rough. Maybe give us a day or two to settle in." I felt like I was begging for scraps from my own family. "Michael, I'm his grandmother. I drove 15 hours to be here." "I know, and we appreciate that, but Amanda needs to recover. You understand, right?" No, I didn't understand. But I agreed, because what choice did I have? I spent 2 more days in that hotel room ordering room service and watching terrible daytime television while my son and his wife bonded with my grandson in a hospital 3 miles away. Friday morning came and went with no call. I finally drove to the hospital myself, determined to at least see my grandson through the nursery window. That's when I discovered They'd already been discharged. I called Michael immediately. "You took the baby home without even telling me?" "Mom, Amanda wanted to get home to her own space. She's been really anxious about germs and visitors." "I'm not a visitor, Michael. I'm your mother. I'm Ethan's grandmother." "I know that. Look, maybe next month when things settle down." Next month? I'd driven 15 hours to see my grandson next month. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I hung up, packed my bags, and drove back to Phoenix. If they wanted to exclude me from Ethan's birth, fine. But they'd learn that actions have consequences. Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Denver General Hospital. "Is this Rebecca Rodriguez?" "Yes, ma'am." "We have some paperwork issues regarding the birth of Ethan Michael Rodriguez. The insurance claim was denied, and we need to discuss payment arrangements for the delivery bill." My heart started pounding, but not with anxiety, with something much more satisfying. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been some confusion. I'm not responsible for that bill. Our records show you as the financial guarantor for Amanda Rodriguez's delivery." And that's when I realized exactly what my dear daughter-in-law had done while I was driving across 2 states to be there for my grandson's birth. "Ma'am, according to our records, you signed financial responsibility forms for Mrs. Amanda Rodriguez's delivery." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, my mind racing. When exactly was this form signed? Let me check. It shows here that the forms were submitted electronically on November 15th at 11:47 p.m. November 15th. The night I was driving through the middle of nowhere, Utah, probably around the time I stopped for gas near Salt Lake City. I'd been on the road for 8 hours, exhausted, and focused on getting to Denver safely. And how exactly were these forms submitted? Electronically through our patient portal. The signature appears to be yours, Mrs. Rodriguez. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. While I was white-knuckling it through a snowstorm on I-7, desperate to reach Denver before my grandson was born, Amanda was forging my signature on financial documents. "I need to see these forms. Can you email them to me?" "Certainly. What email address should I use?" 20 minutes later, I was staring at documents that made my blood boil. Not only had Amanda forged my signature, but she'd also somehow obtained my social security number, address, and financial information. The forms clearly stated that as the maternal grandmother, except I wasn't the maternal grandmother, I was the paternal grandmother, and Amanda's own mother lived in Seattle. But the most infuriating part was the timing. These forms were submitted while Amanda was sweet-talking me on the phone about being there for the birth, knowing full well that she planned to stick me with the bill while excluding me from actually seeing my grandson. I called the hospital back. "This is Rebecca Rodriguez. I just reviewed the financial responsibility forms, and I need to report fraud." "Fraud? Ma'am. First, I never signed these documents. Second, I'm not the maternal grandmother as stated on the forms. Third, these were submitted without my knowledge or consent while I was driving to Denver at my daughter-in-law's invitation." The billing representative's tone changed immediately. "Ma'am, if you're alleging fraud, I need to transfer you to our legal department." Perfect. While I waited on hold, I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Screenshots of Amanda's texts inviting me to Denver, call logs showing when she contacted me, even photos I'd taken during my drive with timestamps proving where I was when the forms were supposedly signed. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is legal department. I understand you're disputing financial responsibility forms." "I'm not disputing them. I'm reporting identity theft and fraud. I have evidence that these documents were forged." For the next hour, I provided the legal department with every detail of Amanda's deception. They were particularly interested in the fact that Amanda had invited me to Denver while simultaneously committing fraud in my name. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is indeed a serious matter.
We'll be filing a police report and turning this over to our fraud investigation team. In the meantime, all charges to your name are suspended pending investigation." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. Amanda had played this perfectly. She'd gotten me out of the way during the birth, had her private family moment, and planned to stick me with a $10,300 bill as a final insult. What she didn't know was that I'd spent 35 years as a medical billing administrator before retiring. I knew exactly how hospital fraud investigations worked, and I knew Amanda had just committed several felonies. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom, hope you made it home safely. Amanda's doing great, and Ethan is such a good baby. We'll send pictures soon." Pictures? After excluding me from his birth and forging financial documents in my name, they thought pictures would smooth things over? I typed back, "Glad everyone's healthy. Looking forward to meeting him soon." What I didn't mention was that I just spent the afternoon ensuring that Amanda's fraud would be thoroughly investigated by both the hospital and local law enforcement. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. Tuesday morning brought another call from Denver General. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Detective Thompson with the Denver Police Department. We've been assigned to investigate the fraud case you reported. We need to ask you some questions." "Of course. Can you walk me through the timeline of events leading up to the alleged document forgery?" For the next 45 minutes, I provided Detective Thompson with a detailed account of everything that had happened. Amanda's invitation, the 15-hour drive, being turned away at the hospital, the subsequent exclusion from seeing my grandson, and finally, discovering the fraudulent financial responsibility forms. "Mrs. Rodriguez, do you have any documentation supporting your version of events?" "I have text messages, call logs, photos from my drive with a GPS timestamps, and hotel receipts proving I was traveling when the forms were allegedly signed by me." "We'll need copies of all of that. This is shaping up to be a clear case of identity theft and fraud. The fact that the perpetrator invited you to travel while committing crimes in your name suggests premeditation." Premeditation?
Amanda hadn't just made a desperate decision in the moment. She'd planned this entire scenario. The invitation, the exclusion, the fraud. All of it had been calculated to humiliate me while sticking me with their medical bills. Detective, what happens next? We'll be obtaining warrants for financial records, hospital surveillance footage, and digital evidence from the submission of these fraudulent forms. If our investigation confirms what you've told me, your daughter-in-law will be facing several felony charges. After ending the call, I realized I felt lighter than I had in days. Not because I wanted Amanda to face criminal charges, but because finally someone was taking this seriously. I wasn't being paranoid or oversensitive. I'd been the victim of a calculated crime. My doorbell rang that afternoon. Through the peephole, I could see a woman in her 30s holding a manila envelope. "Rebecca Rodriguez?" "Yes." "I'm Sarah Chen, investigator with Denver General Hospital's Fraud Prevention Department. I have some documents for you to review." She handed me the envelope and waited while I opened it. Inside were printed copies of the security footage from the night the fraudulent forms were submitted. The screenshots showed Amanda at a computer in the family lounge typing on their patient portal system. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" These images were captured at 11:52 p.m. on November 15th, approximately 5 minutes after the financial responsibility forms were submitted under your name. There was Amanda, clear as day, hunched over a laptop in the hospital's waiting area with the timestamp showing I was still 4 hours away from Denver, somewhere in the Utah mountains with no cell service. "What happens now?" I asked. "The evidence is overwhelming. Hospital fraud is a federal offense when it involves identity theft across state lines. Your daughter-in-law is looking at significant jail time and financial penalties." As Sarah Chen drove away, I sat on my front porch watching the Arizona sunset and thinking about how drastically everything had changed. A week ago, I'd been a grandmother driving across the country to welcome my first grandson.
Now, I was a victim of identity theft with my daughter-in-law facing federal charges. My phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Mom, what the hell did you do? Michael's voice was shaking with anger, but underneath I heard something else. Fear. Hello to you too, Michael. I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. Don't play games with me. The police showed up at our house this morning with a warrant. Amanda's been arrested for fraud. They said you pressed charges. I settled back in my porch chair, watching a roadrunner dart across my front yard. I didn't press charges, Michael. I simply reported identity theft when the hospital called, asking how I wanted to pay Amanda's delivery bill. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what delivery bill? The $10,300 bill for Ethan's birth that your wife stuck me with while you two were playing happy family without me. That's impossible. Our insurance covered everything. Poor Michael. Still so naive about the woman he'd married. Your insurance was denied, honey. That's why the hospital called me. Apparently, Amanda made me financially responsible for her delivery while I was driving through Utah to see my grandson, who I was then not allowed to meet. Another long silence. I could practically hear the pieces clicking together in his mind. Mom, there has to be some explanation. Amanda wouldn't do something like that, wouldn't she? The same woman who invited me to drive 15 hours for the birth, then had you turn me away at the hospital door. The same woman who's avoided every one of my calls for the past week. She's been recovering from childbirth. Michael, she forged my signature on legal documents. There's security footage of her doing it. This isn't a misunderstanding. I heard Amanda's voice in the background, shrill and panicked. Michael covered the phone, but I could make out fragments of their conversation. Amanda claiming it was all a mistake, that she'd only put my name down as emergency contact, that she never meant for me to be responsible for the bills. Michael came back on the line. Amanda says this is all a misunderstanding. She put you down as emergency contact, not financial guarantor. Michael, I've seen the documents. I was a medical billing administrator for 35 years. I know the difference between an emergency contact form and a financial responsibility agreement. Your wife committed fraud. Jesus Christ. His voice cracked. Mom, what happens now? That depends on Amanda. The detective told me that if she makes full restitution and admits responsibility, they might consider reduced charges. But Michael, she didn't just steal from me. She humiliated me. She made me drive across 2 states to be rejected at my own grandson's birth, then tried to stick me with the bill for the privilege. I know, and I'm sorry about that. But criminal charges? Prison? She just had a baby, Mom. And I just became a grandmother, Michael. That didn't stop her from committing identity theft. I could hear Amanda crying in the background, and my heart clenched. This should have been such a happy time. My first grandson, healthy and perfect. And instead, I was discussing felony charges with his father. What do you want me to do? Michael asked finally. I want you to be honest with me about what really happened. Did Amanda plan to exclude me from the birth from the beginning? Another pause. Then quietly, yes. The confirmation hit harder than I'd expected, even though I'd known it was true. Why? She said having you there would be stressful, that she wanted the birth to be just our immediate family. I am immediate family, Michael. I'm your mother. I'm Ethan's grandmother. I know. I should have stood up to her. I should have told you what she was planning instead of letting you drive all that way. Yes, you should have. But you chose to protect her feelings instead of mine. And now she's facing federal charges because neither of you thought about consequences. Amanda's voice got louder in the background, and suddenly she was on the phone. Rebecca, this is all a horrible mistake. I never meant for you to be responsible for any bills. I was in labor. I was scared. I just put down names on forms without thinking. Amanda, you submitted those forms at midnight while texting me about being excited to see me. You knew exactly what you were doing. Please, I just had a baby. My hormones are all over the place. Can't we work this out As a family? We stopped being family when you forged my signature, Amanda. We stopped being family when you excluded me from my grandson's birth after making me drive 15 hours. Now we're just two people on opposite sides of a criminal investigation. You can't do this to us. What about Ethan? Do you want him to grow up without his mother? The manipulation was breathtaking. After everything she'd done, Amanda was trying to make me the villain for reporting her crimes. I want Ethan to grow up with honest parents. Unfortunately, that seems to be asking for too much. Rebecca, please, I'll pay the hospital bill. I'll do whatever you want. Just drop the charges. I can't drop charges I didn't file, Amanda. The hospital filed them when they discovered the fraud. The police are pursuing them because you committed multiple felonies. This isn't about what I want anymore. Michael came back on the phone. Mom, Amanda's attorney says if you don't cooperate with the prosecution, the charges will probably be dismissed. And what exactly are you asking me to do, Michael? Just don't testify. Don't provide evidence. Let this whole thing go away. I closed my eyes and thought about all the years I'd supported Michael, the college tuition I'd helped pay, the down payment on his first apartment, the car I'd co-signed for when his credit was shaky, the countless times I'd put his needs before my own. Michael, your wife committed identity theft. She frauded a hospital. She excluded me from my grandson's birth after manipulating me to travel across the country, and now you want me to help her escape consequences for all of that? She's family, Mom. No, Michael, family doesn't do what Amanda did to me. Family doesn't humiliate each other and then commit crimes to cover their tracks. So that's it. You're going to send Ethan's mother to prison? I'm going to tell the truth when asked. What happens after that is up to a judge and jury. I hung up and sat in the darkening evening, listening to coyotes howl in the distance. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off. Tomorrow, I had an appointment with the FBI agent assigned to the case, and I had a feeling things were about to get much more complicated. Because what I hadn't told Michael was that the investigation had uncovered something else.
Amanda's fraud wasn't limited to my grandson's birth. The agents had found evidence of similar schemes involving at least 3 other family members over the past 2 years. Amanda Rodriguez wasn't just a new mother who'd made some poor decisions. She was a serial fraudster, and my case was just the tip of the iceberg. FBI agent Lisa Chen had the kind of calm, professional demeanor that probably came from years of investigating financial crimes. She sat across from me in my living room, a thick file folder on the coffee table between us. Mrs. Rodriguez, I need to prepare you for what we've discovered during our investigation into Amanda Rodriguez's activities. I'd been expecting this conversation since yesterday's phone call from Michael. The way he'd sounded, desperate and cornered, told me there was more to this story than just my fraudulent hospital bill. How bad is it? Agent Chen opened her file. Over the past 36 months, Amanda Rodriguez has committed identity theft and fraud against no fewer than 6 family members across 4 states. The total amount stolen exceeds $47,000. My stomach dropped. 6 people? Your case involving the hospital bill was actually what broke this open for us. When we started investigating, we found a pattern of Amanda obtaining personal information from family members and using it to open credit cards, take out small loans, and submit fraudulent insurance claims. She handed me a document showing a timeline of Amanda's crimes. Michael's younger sister, Sophie, in California, had $8,000 in unauthorized charges on credit cards Amanda had opened in her name. Amanda's own sister in Seattle had been stuck with a $5,000 emergency room bill that Amanda had somehow managed to transfer to her. Michael's cousin Jake in Texas had a $12,000 car loan taken out in his name that he'd never applied for. Did any of them know what was happening? Most of them thought they were isolated incidents, a paperwork mix-up here, an identity theft there. Amanda was very careful to keep her fraudulent activity spread out geographically and temporally so no one would see the pattern. But people had to know something was wrong. They did, but Amanda was skilled at providing plausible explanations. She'd claim computer errors, clerical mistakes, or temporary financial difficulties that she promised to resolve immediately.
She'd often send partial payments to keep victims from pursuing the matter too aggressively. Agent Chen pulled out another document. The birth certificate fraud involving your grandson was actually the most sophisticated scheme we've seen. She didn't just steal your financial information, she created an entire false narrative about your relationship to the child to justify making you financially responsible for the delivery. What do you mean? On the hospital forms, Amanda claimed you were the maternal grandmother and had specifically requested to be financially responsible for the delivery as a gift to the new parents. She forged your signature on documents stating that you were excited to cover all costs related to the birth. The audacity was staggering. Not only had Amanda excluded me from Ethan's birth, she'd also created a fake story about my enthusiasm for paying for the privilege of being excluded. She told the hospital billing department that you were wealthy and had specifically asked to handle all expenses as your contribution to the family. That's why they called you so confidently about payment. While she was actually excluding me from meeting my own grandson. Exactly. The cruelty of it is what makes this case particularly compelling for prosecution. It wasn't just financial fraud. It was psychological manipulation designed to maximize emotional damage while generating financial benefit for the perpetrator. Agent Chen closed the file and looked at me directly. Mrs. Rodriguez, I need you to understand something. Amanda's crimes weren't impulsive decisions made under stress. This was a calculated pattern of behavior spanning years. She's stolen from family members who trusted her, destroyed relationships, and shown no remorse until she got caught. What happens now? She's facing federal charges that could result in 15 to 20 years in prison. The state charges for identity theft could add another 5 to 10 years. With 6 victims across multiple states and a pattern of sophisticated fraud, this is a very serious case. My phone had been ringing all morning, Michael calling every hour, Amanda's mother calling from Seattle, even Michael's sister Sophie calling from California. I hadn't answered any of them. Agent Chen, can I ask you something? How did Amanda get all this personal information about family members? Social media mostly. She was very active in family Facebook groups, birthday posts, anniversary celebrations. People post their birth dates, their children's full names, their anniversary dates. Amanda collected all of that information and used it to answer security questions when opening accounts. She used our own family connections against us. It's more common than you think. Family members often have access to the kind of personal information needed for financial fraud, and they're usually the last people we suspect. After Agent Chen left, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone. 23 missed calls, 15 text messages, all from family members who suddenly wanted to talk to me about Amanda's misunderstanding with the hospital bill. I decided to call Sophie first. She'd always been my favorite of Michael's siblings, and I was curious about her perspective on Amanda's crimes. Aunt Rebecca, thank God you called back. Michael told me what's happening with Amanda and the hospital bills. This is all so crazy. Sophie, Agent Chen told me that Amanda stole from you too. $8,000 in credit card fraud. Silence.
Then how did you know about that? Because we're all victims of the same person, sweetheart. What did she tell you when it happened? She said it was a mistake, that she'd accidentally used my information instead of hers when applying for a card. She said she was mortified and promised to handle everything. She even made payments for a few months, but she never paid it all off. No. And when I tried to pursue it, she got defensive and said I was trying to destroy her family over a paperwork error. Michael sided with her, said I was being vindictive. Sophie, that wasn't a paperwork error. That was identity theft, and it wasn't an isolated incident. I spent the next 30 minutes telling Sophie about the 6 victims, the pattern of fraud, and the sophisticated nature of Amanda's crimes. By the end of the call, Sophie was crying. I feel so stupid. I should have reported it immediately instead of believing her lies. You trusted family. That's not stupid. That's normal. What are you going to do? I'm going to testify truthfully about what happened to me. Amanda made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. That evening, Michael showed up at my door. He looked terrible. unshaven, exhausted, holding Ethan against his chest like a shield. "Mom, we need to talk." I looked at my grandson for the first time, and my heart melted completely. He was perfect, tiny and peaceful, sleeping against his father's chest. This should have been the happiest moment of my life, finally meeting Ethan. Instead, it was happening in the shadow of his mother's crimes. "He's beautiful, Michael." "Mom, please. Amanda's looking at 20 years in prison. Ethan needs his mother. Ethan needs honest parents who don't commit felonies. She made mistakes, but she's not a monster. She's scared of not having enough money. She grew up poor, and she panics about financial security. Michael, she stole from 6 different family members over 3 years. That's not panic. That's criminal behavior. Please just consider not testifying. Without your cooperation, the federal case falls apart." I held out my arms for Ethan, and Michael reluctantly handed him over. My grandson was warm and solid and perfect. I'd driven 15 hours to meet him, only to be turned away at the hospital door by his criminal mother. "Michael, answer me honestly. Did you know what Amanda was doing to other family members?" "No. I swear I didn't know about any of it." "But you knew she was excluding me from the birth while pretending I was welcome." "Yes, and I should have stopped that. I should have stood up to her. You chose her over me, Michael. You chose to protect her lies instead of protecting me from fraud and humiliation. I love you, Mom, but she's my wife. She's the mother of my child." I looked down at Ethan, sleeping peacefully in my arms. Such an innocent little boy, born into such a complicated situation. What happens to Ethan if Amanda goes to prison? I don't know. I can't afford childcare and work full-time. My salary merely covers the mortgage. And there it was, the real reason for this visit. Michael wasn't just asking me to protect Amanda from consequences. He was asking me to solve his childcare problems by allowing a federal crime to go unpunished. That sounds like something you should have considered before you married a criminal, Michael. I handed Ethan back to his father and walked to my front door. "Mom, please." "Good night, Michael. Give my love to your son." As I closed the door behind them, I realized that my relationship with Michael might never recover from this. But some things were more important than keeping peace in the family. Some things were worth fighting for, even when it meant standing alone. The courthouse steps were slick with morning dew. As I walked toward the federal building in downtown Phoenix, Agent Chen had explained that due to the multi-state nature of Amanda's crimes, the case would be prosecuted in federal court rather than local courts, and that meant traveling to the regional facility for pretrial proceedings. Amanda's preliminary hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. I didn't have to be there, as a witness wouldn't be called until trial, but I wanted to see her face when the full scope of her crimes was read aloud in open court. The courtroom was nearly empty. Just the attorneys, court staff, a few family members, and me sitting in the back row. Amanda sat at the defendant's table, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands shackled. She looked small and scared, nothing like the confident woman who'd manipulated me into driving 15 hours just to humiliate me. Michael sat in the front row, holding Ethan, flanked by Amanda's parents, who'd flown in from Seattle. None of them acknowledged my presence, though I saw Michael's shoulders tense when I entered the room. "The United States versus Amanda Marie Rodriguez," the clerk announced. "Case number 2024 CR 1847. Federal prosecutor Sarah Williams stood up with a file that seemed impossibly thick for someone I'd thought of as just my manipulative daughter-in-law. "Your Honor, the defendant is charged with 6 counts of identity theft, 4 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of mail fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud across state lines. The government alleges that over a 36-month period, the defendant systematically targeted family members for financial exploitation, stealing over $47,000 and causing significant emotional and financial damage to the victims. The judge, an elderly woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the charges carefully.
Miss Rodriguez, you're being represented by counsel today. Amanda's attorney, a young man who looked overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, stood up. Yes, Your Honor. Michael Stevens, representing the defendant. Mr. Stevens, has your client been informed of the charges against her? She has, Your Honor. We're entering a plea of not guilty to all charges. Not guilty. Even with video footage of her submitting fraudulent documents, Amanda was going to claim innocence. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow I was. Your Honor, Prosecutor Williams continued, the government requests that the defendant remain in custody pending trial. Ms. Rodriguez has demonstrated a pattern of deceptive behavior toward family members, and several victims have reported receiving threatening communications since her arrest. Threatening communications? I wondered if that included the dozen voicemails Amanda had left on my phone over the past week, alternately begging for mercy and accusing me of destroying her family. Mr. Stevens, your response. Your Honor, my client is a new mother with no prior criminal record. She has strong ties to the community and poses no flight risk. We request release on own recognizance. The prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, the defendant committed identity theft against 6 family members across 4 states over 3 years. This shows sophisticated criminal planning and a willingness to exploit the people who trusted her most. Additionally, the defendant's crimes against victim Rebecca Rodriguez involved elaborate deception designed to maximize both financial damage and emotional trauma. Judge Morrison looked directly at Amanda for the first time. Miss Rodriguez, you defrauded your husband's grandmother. It was a misunderstanding, Your Honor. I never intended. You forged her signature on legal documents while she was traveling across the country at your invitation to attend your child's birth. Amanda's attorney touched her arm, trying to get her to stop talking, but she continued. I was in labor, Your Honor. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed someone to take financial responsibility, and my mother-in-law has means. You excluded her from the birth after making her drive 15 hours to attend. That was a medical decision. My doctor recommended. Judge Morrison held up her hand. Miss Rodriguez, you're making this worse for yourself. Mr. Stevens, control your client. The judge reviewed the case file for another few minutes while Amanda whispered urgently with her attorney. Finally, she looked up. Given the sophisticated nature of these crimes, the pattern of behavior spanning multiple years, and the defendant's apparent inability to take responsibility for her actions, I'm denying bail. Miss Rodriguez will remain in federal custody pending trial. Amanda burst into tears, but they looked calculated to me. The same kind of manipulative crying I'd watched her use on Michael whenever she wanted something. Michael stood up from the gallery. Your Honor, she just had a baby. Our son needs his mother. Sir, please sit down. This is not the appropriate time for outbursts. But, Your Honor, Mr. Rodriguez, sit down now or I'll hold you in contempt. Michael sank back into his seat, clutching Ethan tighter. Amanda's mother was openly weeping. Her father sat stone-faced, staring at his daughter like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. As the court officers led Amanda away, she turned and looked directly at me. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't manipulation or self-pity. It was pure hatred. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse and sat on a bench across the street, watching Michael's family emerge. They stood on the courthouse steps for several minutes, probably arguing about what to do next. Finally, Amanda's parents got in their car and drove away without saying goodbye to Michael or Ethan. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I hope you're proud of yourself. You destroyed my daughter's life. Amanda's mother, apparently. I deleted the message without responding. Another text came immediately after. Ethan will grow up without his mother because of your vindictiveness. I turned off my phone and drove home thinking about vindictiveness. Was it vindictive to report crimes committed against me? Was it vindictive to refuse to help criminals escape consequences for their actions? Or was it vindictive to invite your mother-in-law to drive 15 hours for her grandson's birth, exclude her from the hospital, forge her signature on financial documents, and then try to manipulate her into silence when she discovered the fraud? That evening, I received a call from Agent Chen. Mrs. Rodriguez, I wanted to update you on the case. Amanda's attorney reached out about a possible plea agreement. What kind of plea? Full restitution to all victims, guilty pleas to reduce charges, and a recommended sentence of 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. What do you think? Honestly, I think she should take it. If this goes to trial and she's convicted on all charges, she's looking at 20 years minimum. But the decision isn't mine to make. What happens next? The prosecutor will present the plea offer to all 6 victims. If everyone agrees, Amanda can avoid trial. If anyone objects, we proceed to full prosecution. After hanging up, I walked through my house thinking about justice versus mercy. Amanda had systematically stolen from family members who trusted her. She'd manipulated me into one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. She'd shown no remorse until she got caught. And even then, she was trying to blame everyone except herself. But she was Ethan's mother, and Michael was going to struggle as a single parent if she went to prison for 20 years. My phone rang. Michael's name on the screen. Mom, did Agent Chin call you about the plea deal? She did. Will you accept it? I looked at the framed photo on my mantle, taken during happier times when Michael was small, and I thought I understood how family relationships worked. I need some time to think about it, Michael. Mom, please. 5 years is already a long time. Ethan will be in kindergarten when she gets out. Your wife committed federal crimes against 6 people, Michael. 3 years seems like a pretty light sentence for that level of betrayal.
It's about Ethan. It's about our family. Michael, our family stopped existing the moment Amanda decided to commit identity theft against me. What we have now is just the aftermath of her choices. I hung up and sat in my quiet house, thinking about what justice should look like for a woman who'd used family love as a weapon against the people who trusted her most. The deadline for responding to the plea offer was Friday. I had 3 days to decide whether Amanda Rodriguez deserved mercy or justice. And I was discovering that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to save them from the consequences of their own actions. I rejected the plea deal on Friday morning. And by Friday afternoon, Amanda's attorney was calling me personally to negotiate. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Michael Stevens, Amanda's attorney. I understand you have concerns about the proposed plea agreement. I was in my garden, deadheading roses and enjoying the Arizona sunshine. Mr. Stevens, I have concerns about your client committing federal crimes against my family. I appreciate your position, but I think you should consider the impact of a lengthy trial on your grandson. The media attention, the family stress. There it was. The attempt to make me responsible for the consequences of Amanda's choices. Mr. Stevens, my grandson's well-being should have been Amanda's priority before she decided to become a career criminal. Mrs. Rodriguez, I think there may be some information that could change your perspective on this case. Something in his tone made me stop pruning. What kind of information? Could we meet in person? There are complications in this case that the prosecutor may not have shared with you. 2 hours later, I sat across from Michael Stevens in his downtown Phoenix office. He looked nervous, constantly adjusting his tie and avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Rodriguez, what I'm about to tell you is confidential attorney-client information that Amanda has authorized me to share in hopes of reaching a resolution. I'm listening.
Amanda's crimes weren't entirely her own idea. She was being coerced. I almost laughed. Coerced? By whom? Her previous husband. Amanda was married before she met Michael to a man named Derek Collins. Their divorce was complicated. Stevens pulled out a file folder. Derek Collins is a professional con artist with a history of sophisticated financial fraud schemes. He trained Amanda in identity theft techniques and forced her to target her new family after she remarried. Forced her? How? Blackmail. Derek has compromising information about Amanda's past that could destroy her marriage to Michael and her relationship with your family. I stared at Stevens, trying to process this absurd story. So Amanda committed federal crimes against 6 family members because her ex-husband made her do it, essentially? Yes, she has been sending half of everything she stole to keep him from revealing her secrets. What secrets? Stevens hesitated. Amanda has a criminal record before she met Michael. Identity theft, fraud, several other charges. She served 18 months in prison in Oregon before moving to Colorado and reinventing herself. The room felt like it was spinning. Michael doesn't know about this. No one knows. Amanda changed her last name, moved states, and created an entirely new identity when she met Michael. Derek discovered her new life and has been exploiting her ever since. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. If this was true, it meant Amanda wasn't just a desperate new mother who'd made bad decisions. She was a career criminal with an extensive history of fraud who'd lied about her entire identity to marry my son. Mr. Stevens, why are you telling me this? Because Amanda is terrified that if this goes to trial, Derek will surface as a witness and reveal everything. She's more afraid of Michael discovering her past than she is of going to prison. And you think this information should make me more sympathetic to her? I think it explains why she made the choices she did. Amanda isn't the master criminal the prosecutor is portraying. She's a victim herself. I stood up and gathered my purse. Mr. Stevens, let me see if I understand this correctly. Your client is a convicted felon who lied about her identity, married my son under false pretenses, committed crimes against his family while being blackmailed by her criminal ex-husband. And you think this makes her more sympathetic? Mrs. Rodriguez, the only thing this information tells me is that Amanda is a more sophisticated criminal than I realized, and that my son has been living with a complete stranger for 5 years. Please, just consider. I'm considering calling Michael immediately to warn him that he's married to a convicted felon.
Mrs. Rodriguez, that would violate attorney-client privilege. I shared this information in confidence. You shared it hoping I'd feel sorry for your client. Instead, you've convinced me that she's even more dangerous than I thought. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Mr. Stevens, when this goes to trial, make sure the prosecutor knows about Derek Collins. If Amanda's been sending stolen money to a known criminal, that's another federal crime. Mrs. Rodriguez, please. Good day, Mr. Stevens. I drove home in a daze. Amanda wasn't just my daughter-in-law who'd made bad decisions. She was a career criminal who'd infiltrated my family under false pretenses. Michael had no idea who he'd really married. Ethan had been born to a woman who'd been lying about her identity since before she met his father. My phone was ringing when I walked in the door, Michael's name on the screen. Mom, Amanda's attorney said you met with him today. I did. He said you're still refusing the plea deal. That's correct. Mom, please, Amanda's already facing 5 years in prison. How is that not enough? I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the photo of Michael's graduation from college, back when I thought I understood who my family was. Michael, did Amanda ever tell you about her life before she moved to Colorado? Of course. She grew up in Seattle, went to college in Oregon, worked in retail management before we met. Why? Did she ever mention being married before? Silence. Then what are you talking about? Did she ever mention a criminal record? Mom, what the hell is going on? Michael, I think you need to sit down, and you might want to arrange for someone to watch Ethan while we talk. As I prepared to destroy my son's understanding of his wife and the mother of his child,
I realized that Amanda's crimes against me were just the beginning. The real crime was what she'd done to Michael, building their entire relationship on an elaborate lie that was about to come crashing down. Michael's silence on the phone stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Michael, are you still there? Criminal record?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Amanda served 18 months in prison in Oregon for identity theft and fraud before she moved to Colorado and met you." "That's impossible. I would have known." "She changed her name and created a new identity." "Michael, her attorney told me this afternoon. She's not who you think she is." I heard Ethan crying in the background, and Michael's voice became muffled as he tried to comfort his son while processing the information that his wife was a stranger. "Mom, how do you know this? How can this be true?" "Her attorney told me she's been blackmailed by her ex-husband, a man named Derek Collins, who's also a professional criminal. She's been stealing from our family and sending half the money to him to keep him quiet about her past." The crying in the background stopped, and I could hear Michael moving around, probably going somewhere private to continue the conversation. "Jesus Christ. Mom, are you sure about this?" "Michael, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Amanda has been lying to you about everything since the day you met. Her background, her family situation, her reasons for moving to Colorado, all of it. But I met her parents. I've talked to her sister." "Did you? Or did you meet people she introduced as her parents and sister?" Another long pause. I could practically hear Michael's world crashing down around him. "Mom, what am I supposed to do with this information? You need to protect yourself and Ethan. If Amanda has been living under a false identity, there could be financial implications, legal problems, immigration issues." "Immigration issues?" "Michael, you don't know who she really is. You have no idea what other secrets she's hiding. I need to confront her." "She's in federal custody. Michael, you can't just show up and demand answers." "Then I need to hire my own attorney. I need to find out what else she's lied about." "That's probably a good idea." "Mom, if this is all true, if she's been lying about everything, then Ethan and I are both victims of her fraud." "Yes, you are." "She made me complicit in excluding you from Ethan's birth. She made me choose sides between my wife and my mother when I should have been protecting both of you from her lies." "Michael, you couldn't have known." "But I should have questioned it when she insisted you couldn't be at the hospital. When she kept making excuses for why you couldn't visit, I should have realized something was wrong." I heard the pain in his voice and wished I could take it away, but Michael needed to understand the full scope of what Amanda had done to their family. "There's something else, Michael." "What?" "According to her attorney, Amanda is more afraid of you discovering her past than she is of going to prison. She'd rather serve 20 years than have you know who she really is." "Well, it's too late for that now." "Michael, I want you to think about something. If Amanda has been stealing from family members and sending money to her ex-husband, what else has she been lying about? Your finances? Your legal status as a married couple? Ethan's paternity?" "Mom, don't. I can't even think about that right now." "I know it's horrible, but you need to consider all possibilities. You need to protect yourself and Ethan." After hanging up with Michael, I sat in my quiet house thinking about how many lives Amanda had destroyed with her lies. Not just the 6 family members she'd stolen from, but Michael, who'd married a stranger, Ethan, who'd been born into a web of deception, and even Amanda's fake family, who had been playing roles in her elaborate fiction. My phone rang again. Agent Chen. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I just got some interesting information from Amanda's attorney. Apparently, she's been cooperative about providing details on her accomplice, Derek Collins, her ex-husband. According to Amanda, Collins has been running similar blackmail schemes against other women across the western states. She's agreed to provide evidence against him in exchange for consideration at sentencing." "What kind of evidence?" "Financial records, communication logs, details about his other victims. If Amanda's information leads to Collins' arrest, it could significantly impact her own sentence." "Agent Chen, can I ask you something? Did you know about Amanda's criminal record in Oregon?" "We discovered that during our background investigation. Yes. Amanda Rodriguez isn't her real name." "What is her real name?" Jennifer Collins. She was married to Derek Collins when she committed her first series of identity theft crimes in Oregon. Their divorce was part of a plea agreement where she testified against him, but he was acquitted on a technicality. Jennifer Collins. My daughter-in-law's real name was Jennifer Collins, and she'd been lying about her identity for the entire 5 years she'd been married to Michael. Agent Chen, what happens to my son legally? If his wife has been living under a false identity, is their marriage even legal? That's a complicated question that would depend on Colorado state law and the specific circumstances of their marriage. Your son should definitely consult with a family law attorney. And what about my grandson? Birth certificate issues can usually be resolved through the courts, but again, your son needs legal representation. After ending the call, I realized that Amanda's crimes had created a legal nightmare that would take years to untangle. Michael's marriage might not be legal, Ethan's birth certificate might be fraudulent, their finances could be compromised. Their entire life together had been built on lies. My doorbell rang at 8 p.m. Through the peephole, I could see Michael standing on my front porch holding Ethan and a large duffel bag. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "Mom, can Ethan and I stay here tonight? I can't be in that house anymore. Everything in it reminds me of lies," she told me. I opened the door and wrapped my son and grandson in the biggest hug I'd given in months. "Of course you can stay for as long as you need." As I helped Michael settle Ethan in my guest room, I realized that Amanda's attempt to destroy our family had actually brought Michael and me closer together. Her lies and manipulation had backfired completely.
But I also knew that the worst was yet to come, because if Jennifer Collins had been living under false identity for 5 years, there were probably other secrets waiting to be discovered. And some of those secrets might be dangerous enough to threaten the safety of my son and grandson. The trial of Jennifer Collins, aka Amanda Rodriguez, began on a cold Monday morning in February. The federal courthouse in Phoenix was busier than I'd expected, with news vans parked outside and reporters interviewing anyone willing to talk about the case. Agent Chen had warned me that Amanda's case had attracted media attention because of the sophisticated nature of her identity fraud and the fact that she'd victimized her own family members. Family fraud cases always get coverage, she'd explained. People want to understand how someone can betray the people who trust them most. Michael and I arrived together, leaving Ethan with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Michael had been staying with me for 3 weeks now, and we'd developed a comfortable routine. He'd wake up early to feed Ethan while I made coffee. We'd share breakfast and discuss the day's courtroom strategy, then drive downtown together. "You ready for this?" Michael asked as we walked up the courthouse steps. "Are you?" I still can't believe I was married to someone whose real name I didn't even know. Michael's attorney had confirmed that his marriage to Jennifer Collins was legally valid, despite her false identity, but the emotional betrayal was devastating. He'd also learned that Jennifer had been lying about her job, her education, and even her relationship with her supposed family in Seattle. "Mom, I keep thinking about all the time she talked about her childhood, her parents, her college experience. All of it was lies, every single story." "Michael, you couldn't have known. She was a professional deceiver." Inside the courtroom, I was surprised by how crowded it was. Besides the 6 victim families, there were reporters, law enforcement officials, and what looked like other potential victims who'd come forward since Jennifer's arrest. Jennifer sat at the defendant's table, wearing a conservative blue dress, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the confident woman who'd manipulated our family for years. She looked small, defeated, and much older than her 32 years. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. As the trial began, prosecutor Sarah Williams painted a picture of Jennifer Collins that was even more disturbing than I had imagined. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant is not who she claims to be. Jennifer Collins has spent the last 8 years living under a false identity, committing identity theft across multiple states, and destroying the lives of people who trusted her most." Williams explained that Jennifer had been arrested in Oregon in 2016 for identity theft and fraud, served 18 months in prison, then disappeared after her release. She'd created the identity of Amanda Rodriguez using stolen documents and had moved to Colorado specifically to find new victims.
The defendant didn't just steal money from her victims, she stole their sense of security, their trust in family relationships, and their belief that the people closest to them were who they claimed to be. Jennifer's attorney, Michael Stevens, attempted to portray his client as a victim of circumstance. Jennifer Collins made mistakes, serious mistakes, but she was driven to these actions by fear and desperation. Her ex-husband, Derek Collins, is a dangerous criminal who threatened her safety and forced her into criminal activity through blackmail and intimidation. But when Williams cross-examined Jennifer the next day, the victim narrative fell apart completely. Miss Collins, you testified that Derek Collins forced you to steal from your husband's family. Is that correct? Yes. He threatened to tell Michael about my past if I didn't send him money. But you were already stealing from family members before Derek Collins contacted you, weren't you? Jennifer hesitated. I don't know what you mean. I'm referring to the credit card fraud you committed against Michael's sister, Sophie Rodriguez, in March 2022. Derek Collins didn't contact you until June 2022, according to your own testimony. Jennifer's face went pale. That was different. That was a mistake. A mistake. You opened 4 credit cards in Sophie Rodriguez's name, spent $8,000, and made no payments for 6 months? That was a mistake? I was going to pay it back. Just like you were going to pay back the $2,300 hospital bill you fraudulently assigned to Rebecca Rodriguez? I was in labor. I wasn't thinking clearly. Williams pulled out a document. Miss Collins, this is a transcript of your phone call with Rebecca Rodriguez 3 days before you gave birth, inviting her to drive from Arizona to Colorado for the delivery. Did Derek Collins force you to make that call? No. But did Derek Collins force you to exclude Rebecca Rodriguez after she drove 15 hours to be there for the delivery? No. Did Derek Collins force you to forge Rebecca Rodriguez's signature on financial documents while she was traveling to see her grandson? No. But you don't understand the pressure I was under. Williams walked closer to the witness stand. Miss Collins, isn't it true that you invited Rebecca Rodriguez to Colorado specifically so you could manipulate her into being financially responsible for your delivery? I didn't plan it that way. Isn't it true that you researched Rebecca Rodriguez's financial status before inviting her to the birth? Jennifer didn't answer. Miss Collins, we have evidence that you accessed Rebecca Rodriguez's credit reports and bank statements 2 weeks before your son was born. Did Derek Collins force you to do that financial research? The courtroom was completely silent. Michael grabbed my hand, his face white with shock. Miss Collins, answer the question. No, Jennifer whispered. No, he didn't force me to research her finances. So, you planned to fraudulently defraud Rebecca Rodriguez before you ever invited her to Colorado, didn't you? I thought she could afford it.
She has money. Miss Collins, you planned to humiliate and defraud your husband's mother because you thought she could afford to be victimized? Jennifer started crying, but her tears looked calculated. You don't understand what it's like to be scared all the time. Scared of what, Ms. Collins? Being honest with your husband about who you really are? Yes. Scared of getting a job to pay your own bills? It's not that simple. Ms. Collins, you stole from 6 family members over 3 years. You lived under a false identity. You excluded your mother-in-law from her grandson's birth after making her travel across 2 states. And you did all of this because you were scared of being honest? Is that your testimony? Yes. Williams turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, fear of honesty is not a defense for federal crimes. As Jennifer was led back to the defendant's table, she looked directly at me for the first time since the trial began. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't remorse or regret. It was pure hatred, the same expression she'd worn when the court officers led her away from the preliminary hearing. Jennifer Collins wasn't a victim. She wasn't a desperate mother who'd made poor choices.
She was a predator who targeted our family because she thought we were easy marks, and I had a feeling that the worst revelations were still to come. On Thursday morning of the second week of trial, Prosecutor Williams called a witness I hadn't been expecting, Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Oregon State Police. Detective Rodriguez, can you tell the jury about your investigation into Jennifer Collins in 2016? Certainly. Ms. Collins was arrested as part of a larger investigation into an identity theft ring operating throughout the Pacific Northwest. She was one of 8 defendants in a case involving over $200,000 in fraudulent charges. Williams pulled up a photograph on the courtroom monitor. Do you recognize the man in this photograph? Yes, that's Derek Collins, Jennifer Collins' husband at the time. He was the ringleader of the operation. Can you describe the nature of their criminal partnership? Derek Collins recruited vulnerable women, typically those with financial difficulties or emotional problems, and trained them to commit identity theft. Jennifer was his most successful partner. I felt Michael's hand tighten around mine. Jennifer hadn't been a victim of Derek Collins' manipulation. She'd been his criminal partner. Detective Rodriguez, what made Jennifer Collins particularly effective at identity theft? She had a natural ability to gain people's trust and access their personal information. She was charming, sympathetic, and able to convince people to share details they would normally keep private, like social security numbers and financial information. Exactly. Jennifer would befriend elderly women, single mothers, people going through divorces, anyone who was emotionally vulnerable. She'd offer help and support while gathering the information she needed to steal their identities. Williams pulled up another document to the jury. Detective Rodriguez, this is a list of Jennifer Collins' victims from 2016. How many people did she defraud? 14 victims over an 18-month period. Total losses exceeded $85,000. 14 victims? I'd thought Jennifer's crimes against our family were her first attempts at fraud, but she'd been a career criminal long before she met Michael. Detective Rodriguez, what happened to Derek Collins? He was acquitted when Jennifer Collins agreed to testify against him as part of her plea agreement. However, we suspected that she didn't provide truthful testimony. What do you mean? Jennifer claimed that Derek forced her to commit the crimes, that she was an unwilling participant, but our investigation suggested that she was an equal partner who enjoyed the criminal lifestyle. Williams turned to face Jennifer at the defendant's table. Detective Rodriguez, after Jennifer Collins was released from prison in 2018, did she maintain contact with Derek Collins? Yes, our surveillance showed that they continued their romantic relationship and their criminal partnership. The divorce was fake, designed to help Jennifer establish a new identity. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Jennifer and Derek were still married.
Collins identified Rebecca Rodriguez as what he called a high-value secondary target because of her financial assets and her emotional attachment to family relationships. I felt cold all over. Derek Collins hadn't just researched Michael, he'd specifically studied me, looking for ways to exploit my love for my family. Agent Chen, what was the ultimate goal of this operation? According to Collins' documentation, the plan was to have Jennifer establish a relationship with Michael, gain access to family financial information, commit systematic fraud against all family members, and then disappear with any children born during the relationship. Disappear how? Collins had detailed plans for fake deaths. Jennifer was supposed to stage her own death and Ethan's death in a car accident, then disappear with Collins and the child. This would have allowed them to collect life insurance payments while maintaining control of Ethan for future extortion schemes. The courtroom was completely silent. Jennifer had planned to fake her own death and Ethan's death, letting Michael grieve for his supposedly deceased wife and child while she lived somewhere else with Collins and Ethan and the insurance money. Agent Chen, were there life insurance policies involved? Yes, Jennifer had taken out substantial life insurance policies on herself and Ethan, with Michael as the beneficiary. The premiums were being paid with money stolen from family members. Williams turned to face the jury. So,
Jennifer Collins was stealing from the Rodriguez family to pay for life insurance policies that she planned to collect fraudulently after faking her own death and kidnapping Ethan? That's correct. Michael was trembling beside me. Jennifer hadn't just planned to steal from us. She'd planned to destroy Michael emotionally by making him believe his wife and child were dead while she lived comfortably somewhere else with Ethan and the insurance money. Agent Chen, what prevented this plan from being executed? Rebecca Rodriguez's decision to report the hospital bill fraud initiated an investigation that uncovered the entire operation before Jennifer could stage the fake deaths. William smiled. So, Mrs. Rodriguez's refusal to pay a fraudulent bill saved her grandson's life and possibly her son's life. According to Collins' notes, if Michael had become suspicious or uncooperative, he was also targeted for elimination. Jennifer's attorney, Stevens, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. This is highly prejudicial. Overruled. The witness may continue. Agent Chen pulled out another document. Derek Collins' operational notes include specific plans for making Michael Rodriguez's death appear accidental if he discovered the truth about Jennifer's identity. I grabbed Michael's hand as the full scope of Jennifer's plan became clear. She hadn't just targeted our family for financial fraud. She'd planned to psychologically destroy Michael, kidnap Ethan, possibly murder Michael if necessary, and steal hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. Agent Chen, in your professional opinion, what would have happened to the Rodriguez family if Rebecca Rodriguez had not reported the fraudulent hospital bill? Based on Collins' timeline, Jennifer would have staged her death and Ethan's death within 6 months of his birth. Michael would have grieved for his supposedly deceased family, while Jennifer and Collins collected insurance money and prepared Ethan for future criminal operations. Future criminal operations? Collins' notes indicate that Ethan would have been raised to become part of the family infiltration operation when he reached adulthood. He would have been trained to target wealthy families just like his mother did. My grandson had been destined to become a criminal from birth, raised by people who'd kidnapped him and forced him to commit crimes against innocent families.
Williams turned to face Jennifer at the defendant's table. Ms. Collins, do you still maintain that you were a victim forced into criminal activity by your ex-husband? Jennifer had been staring at the table throughout Agent Chen's testimony, but now she looked up with the coldest expression I'd ever seen. No, she said quietly. I don't. Ms. Collins, do you have anything to say to the Rodriguez family? Jennifer stood up, ignoring her attorney's attempts to stop her. Yes, I do. She turned to face Michael and me directly. You people thought you were so smart, so careful, so loving, but you were just marks, easy targets who deserved what happened to them. Ms. Collins, Judge Morrison warned, I advise you to... Michael, you were pathetic, so desperate for love that you never questioned anything I told you, so trusting that you handed over your entire life to a stranger. Michael's face was white, but he didn't look away. And Rebecca? Jennifer's voice became venomous. You were the perfect target. A lonely old woman with money who was so desperate to be needed by her family that you'd pay any price for acceptance. Ms. Collins, sit down now, Judge Morrison ordered. The only thing I regret is getting caught before I could finish what we started. You have no idea how satisfying it would have been to watch Michael grieve for his dead wife and child while I lived comfortably somewhere else with Ethan and your money. 2 court officers moved toward Jennifer as she continued her rant. Ethan would have grown up to be just like me, smart, ruthless, and completely unsentimental about family bonds. He would have been perfect for this work. Remove the defendant, Judge Morrison ordered. As the officers led Jennifer away, she called back over her shoulder, Rebecca, you may have won this round, but there are others like me out there, and you'll never feel safe again. The courtroom remained silent for several minutes after Jennifer was removed. Finally, Judge Morrison addressed the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will disregard the defendant's outburst. Please base your verdict solely on the evidence presented. But everyone in that courtroom had seen who Jennifer Collins really was. Not a victim, not a desperate mother, but a calculating predator who'd viewed my family as nothing more than financial resources to be exploited. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and delivered the verdict. On all counts of identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, and kidnapping conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty. Judge Morrison sentenced Jennifer Collins to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As we left the courthouse, Michael carrying Ethan against his chest, I realized that Jennifer's plan had backfired completely. She tried to destroy our family, but her crimes had actually brought Michael and me closer together than we'd been in years.
Mom, Michael said as we walked to the car, I don't know how to thank you. For what? For refusing to let her get away with it. If you'd just paid that hospital bill and stayed quiet, Ethan and I would probably be dead by now while she collected insurance money. I looked at my grandson, sleeping peacefully in his father's arms, completely unaware that his mother had planned to kidnap him and raise him to be a criminal. Michael, the only thing Jennifer was right about is that there are others like her out there. But she was wrong about one thing. What's that? I'll never feel unsafe again, because now I know exactly what predators look like, and I know I'm strong enough to fight them. As we drove home through the Arizona sunset, Ethan babbling happily in his car seat, I realized that Jennifer Collins had given me something she'd never intended to give: the knowledge that I could protect my family from anyone who tried to hurt them. And if another predator ever targeted my family, they'd learn the same lesson Jennifer had learned. Some grandmothers are too smart, too stubborn, and too loving to be easy victims.